I drive long distances for work, mostly through the kind of roads people avoid after midnight. The back roads out in Montana are different at night. Miles of empty highway. Pine trees packed so tight, they almost swallow the moonlight. And radio stations fading into static every few minutes. You see weird things out there sometimes. Deer standing in the middle of the road without moving. Truck stops that look abandoned until one old guy suddenly appears behind the counter. After 3 hours alone, you start talking to road signs just to hear a voice. I used to laugh at truckers who talked about things following their cars at night. My cousin warned me once, if you ever think something's behind your car out there, don't stop driving. I thought he was messing with me, but now I understand why he said it. And if you've ever driven alone on an empty road at night, then you probably know that feeling too. That strange moment when you check your mirror and feel like something's watching you from the darkness behind the headlights. Around 1 in the morning, I stopped at this little roadside diner off Route 287. The kind of place with flickering lights, burnt coffee, and only 2 other people inside. Rain had been hammering the windows for hours, but by the time I left, it had slowed to this cold drizzle that covered the highway in fog. The roads were nearly empty, just wet asphalt stretching through endless trees. My headlights barely reached past the mist drifting across the pavement. About 20 minutes into the drive, the radio started acting strange. Country music would play for a few seconds, then dissolve into static, so loud it made me jump. I kept messing with the dial, trying to clear it up. That's when I noticed something in my rearview mirror, way behind my car, almost blending into the darkness, was a figure walking directly in the center of the road. At first, I figured it was a hitchhiker, maybe some drunk guy wandering the highway after the storm. I remember actually shaking my head and laughing a little because who walks alone out there at that hour? But after a while, something started bothering me. The figure never waved, never stumbled, never moved to the side of the road. It just kept walking in a straight line, perfectly steady. And it looked tall, too tall. I checked the mirror again maybe 5 minutes later, and my stomach dropped. It was closer. That made no sense. I was doing over 60 miles an hour. Nobody on foot should have still been visible back there. I tried convincing myself it was just my imagination, shadows, rain, exhaustion. But every single time I looked in the mirror, the radio static got louder. Not normal static either. It sounded almost like whispering underneath it. Then the figure got close enough that I could finally see its arms. They hung too low, almost to its knees. Tell me honestly, if you saw that behind your car in the middle of nowhere, would you keep driving or would you stop and check? I pushed the gas pedal harder. 70, then almost 80. The engine was whining against the wet road, tires spraying water behind me. But every time I checked the mirror, that thing was still there. Not running, walking. Always just beyond the glow of my taillights. And the closer it got, the worse it looked. Its arms swung too low, bending strangely with every step like the joints were loose. Its movements weren't natural either. They jerked slightly, like an old video skipping frames. And its head, its head stayed tilted to one side the entire time. I still couldn't see a face, just darkness where a face should have been. That's when my GPS suddenly cut out. The screen went black for a second before flashing. Signal lost. I grabbed my phone. No service, not even one bar. By then, the trees around the highway felt different. Too close, like the forest was leaning toward the road. A few miles later, I passed this abandoned gas station sitting by itself in the fog. Old pumps, broken windows, one flickering light over the garage door. And for the first time since I saw it, the figure was gone. I remember letting out this huge breath and laughing at myself. I actually said out loud, "Yeah, okay, you're losing it." Then I looked in the mirror again and nearly drove off the road. It was closer than it had ever been before. Close enough now that I could see its shoulders twitching every few steps. I slammed the door, locks down, so hard my fingers hurt. After that, I stopped looking at the mirror completely. I just stared forward and drove. Maybe for 30 seconds, maybe a minute. It felt longer. Finally, I forced myself to check again. Nothing. The road behind me was completely empty. At the exact same moment, the radio static stopped. Total silence. I laughed nervously just to hear a sound. That's when I started thinking maybe sleep deprivation was messing with me. So I pulled over, just for a minute to breathe. The second I stepped out of the car, I noticed something wrong. The forest was completely silent. No insects. No wind in the trees. Nothing. Just the sound of my engine idling behind me. I grabbed the flashlight from my glove compartment and walked slowly behind the car. My shoes splashed against the wet pavement as the beam shook in my hand. Nothing. The highway behind me was empty. The woods were empty too. Just rows of black trees disappearing into fog. I remember feeling stupid for being that scared. I actually muttered, "He seriously needs sleep." Then I turned back toward the driver's side door and froze. Something was standing beside my car, motionless. Its head sat so high it nearly touched the roof. The headlights reflected off its skin, and I swear it looked wet pale, stretched too tightly over its body. Its arms hung unnaturally long at its sides, fingers almost brushing the ground. And there was this smile, not wide, not human, just this faint pale curve barely visible in the darkness beside the window. Slowly, painfully slowly, its head turned toward me. That's when I realized the truth. It was never trying to catch the car. It was waiting for me to stop driving. And suddenly, every sound disappeared except my breathing and the pounding of my heartbeat in my ears. The rest of this story was pieced together later from a recording found on his phone. Police discovered the car just before sunrise on a back road in Montana. The engine was still running. Driver's door hanging open. No blood. No signs of a struggle. And no footprints anywhere except his. But officers did find one thing they never explained. Deep hand-shaped dents pressed into the roof of the car, like something heavy had climbed on top of it. They said whatever took him never left the road. So if you've ever seen something strange in your rearview mirror late at night, tell me in the comments. And next time you look behind your car, make sure it's still far away. Because some roads in America don't stay empty for long. I used to think the worst part of working night security at a cemetery was boredom. Just sitting there in that little glass booth, watching nothing happen for hours, listening to the wind push through rows of headstones like it had nowhere else to go. A short pause. I've worked jobs where people warned me about danger construction sites, late-night warehouse shifts, even patrol duty outside closed doors, but nothing ever prepared me for a place where the only thing you're supposed to watch is the dead staying where they were put. Another pause, longer this time, like he's choosing whether to continue. I remember that night in particular because everything started too quiet, even for a cemetery. No animals, no wind hitting the trees the usual way. Even my radio had that low, empty static that makes you check if you're still actually connected to anything at all. A faint breath through the mic. I was about to say it was just another shift until the first alert came through on the motion system. A sharp pause. Section C fresh burial, row triggered. He exhales slowly. At first, I thought it was a sensor glitch. Happens sometimes when the ground settles. Dirt shifts, false alarms, nothing unusual. A longer silence. But then I looked at the monitor and saw the soil moving. Not like animals, not like weather. Like something underneath pushing upward from inside the grave. And that was the exact moment I stopped thinking about boredom. I should probably explain where I was working, because places like this don't feel real until you've actually spent a night inside one. It was a remote cemetery out in coastal Maine. Pine forests all around it. Thick fog rolling in from the ocean, so heavy it sometimes looked like the world had been erased beyond the gate. I work night security there. Alone most nights. A small, dry laugh slips through. My coworkers used to joke that graveyard shift is just a saying people throw around until they actually end up working one. They'd say things like, "Man, at least your job is quiet." And yet, usually was a pause. People think I just sit in a booth drinking terrible coffee and watching absolutely nothing happen for hours. Another faint chuckle, more tired than amused. They're not wrong most nights. The place itself had this way of feeling heavier than it should have. Rows of old headstones leaning slightly forward like tired men who forgot how to stand straight. Paths of gravel that never seemed to end the same way twice in your memory. He exhales slowly, and the wind, it didn't sound like normal wind. It sounded like something breathing through trees that had learned how to stay quiet. A brief silence. I never believed in ghosts. Not really. I figured people saw what they wanted to see, especially in places like this. Overactive imaginations, horror movies, sleep deprivation. I blamed it on all of that. A pause that lingers. At least, I used to. It started with one alert, then everything after that stopped feeling normal. The motion system flagged section C again. Same area. Fresh burial row. At first, I told myself it was just settling ground. Cemeteries do that sometimes, especially new graves after rain. A pause. But then I checked the camera feed, and I saw something I've never been able to explain properly. The soil wasn't collapsing inward, it was rising. Slowly. Like something underneath was pressing up from inside the grave, testing the surface. A quiet breath. Then another alert hit. Section D. Then B. One after another. Like the entire cemetery had just decided to wake up at the same time. The monitors started glitching. Static lines. Frozen frames. Cameras switching angles on their own. I tried to reset the system, but that's when I saw movement outside the booth window. A longer pause. Graves were opening, but not the way you'd expect. No force. No violent breaking. It was controlled, like something inside was carefully pushing the soil aside, making space for itself. My flashlight caught the first figure as it stepped out. A silence that stretches. It looked whole, not decayed, not broken, just wrong in the way it stood still, like a person trying to remember how to be alive. Then another one came out, and another. They didn't speak. They didn't run. They just formed a circle, right around my security booth. A breath turned shallow. I remember thinking my heater had failed because the temperature dropped so fast it felt like the air had been drained out of the place. And then the whispering started, soft at first, overlapping, like someone speaking too close to a microphone, but from every direction at once. A pause. Then I realized they weren't random words. They were speaking in voices I recognized. My mother, my childhood friends, even my old teachers. A longer silence. They were saying things only I would know, things I never told anyone. Small mistakes, things I buried in my memory and never brought back up again. A shaky breath. One of them, in my mother's voice, said something I haven't heard since I was a kid. And I remember whispering back, without meaning to. No one else knew that, not even my therapist. A pause that feels heavier. The circle tightened around the booth. And I just sat there, watching, wondering if I was still inside reality. A faint, broken exhale. Tell me you'd still stay in that booth. Be honest. I don't remember deciding to stand up, but I did. My hands were on the desk, my eyes locked on that circle outside the booth. And that's when the ground changed. It didn't crack like stone. It didn't collapse like dirt. It split, like the earth was being unzipped from the inside, slowly, carefully, as if something underneath had finally found the right way out. A pause. The circle of figures didn't move. They just turned their heads downward, all at the same time. And the headstones, they started tilting inward, like they were bowing or praying. A shaky breath. I tried calling dispatch. I don't even remember dialing the number. I just remember hearing ringing that never picked up. Then static. No signal. No backup channel. Nothing. And that's when I heard it. Not a voice from the people outside, but something speaking through the earth itself. It wasn't words at first. It was pressure, like meaning trying to force itself into sound. A long pause. Then the cemetery lights kicked on. Emergency floodlights. I never activated them. Someone else had arrived. I saw them outside the booth, figures moving fast, placing salt lines across the ground, marking symbols between the graves. I don't know who they were. Church, state. I never got an answer. But whatever they did, the cemetery didn't like it. The soil started moving violently, not digging, breathing. Graves collapsing inward like they were being emptied from the inside out. A pause that tightens. Then everything stopped. Instantly. No wind. No whispering. No movement. Just silence, so complete it felt like pressure on my ears. A breath, and I thought it was over. But when I looked out past the booth, one grave was still there. Freshly dug. Perfect edges, like it was waiting. And the headstone, a pause. It had my name on it. I walked closer later. I don't even know why. And the grave was empty. A final breath. But the job posting for my replacement, it was already listed that same night. They told me nothing survives what was under that cemetery. A long pause. No humor now. No tension in his voice. Just something empty behind it. I believe him now. A faint breath, like he's speaking while staring at something he shouldn't still be able to see. I don't work there anymore, obviously. Or at least I don't think I do. Silence. But sometimes I still hear that place when it gets too quiet. A pause. If you saw your own grave appear, would you read the name? Or run before it finished forming? Another beat. Like and follow if you want more backroad stories like this. A slower exhale. I've got one about a highway in Arizona, where the road remembers accidents that never happened. Silence stretches, then only wind, and underneath it, a faint whisper that sounds almost like the viewer's name being repeated too close to the ear.